You're listening to Lighthouse Conversations, brought to you by Lighthouse Haven, a spiritual home for your awakening soul. Lighthouse Conversations is a show where awakening souls gather to be inspired, connected, and enlightened. Spiritual spark plug and host Chelly Canales, that's me, will guide you through the twists and turns of your journey to a safe haven where you are finally free to live your best light. Each episode contains a conversation with a guest who has gone through a spiritual awakening, detailing their unique and life-changing experiences in an intimate and candid way. Although everyone's experience is as unique as they are, we all share one common thread. We're all seeking something. So, come join us on this journey and be prepared to leave with resources that will supercharge you into inspired action. Here's today's episode. Hello, awakening souls. Welcome back to Lighthouse Conversations. I'm so happy you're here. What an episode we have today. I met an extraordinary woman named Andrea Forsythe, and she reminded me about the importance of being able to talk with people who you disagree with, loving people who aren't perfect, because you know what? We're not perfect either. And by acknowledging that in ourselves, seeing that shadow, making friends with it, and from that being able to grow and do better is a beautiful thing. And it's something that many institutions are having to look at and face right now. Churches, in a lot of instances, are having this kind of taking a look at their identity and seeing what does the future mean for us. And for many of these institutions, part of that including people who were traditionally marginalized or ostracized. And this can include the LGBTQ community, women, people of color, groups that didn't necessarily feel safe in the space or were taught to feel like they did not necessarily belong. When really talking to Andrea and what she believes, what she loves, what she follows is, through the teachings of Jesus that, he was with the marginalized people, he stood up for them and showed his love in a way that truly was practicing what he preached. So in today's episode, we discuss Andrea's Mormon faith and how for the problems that she finds within the laws, the dogma, that tend to put laws and dogma over people and their needs, she still has a deep love, a deep affection, a deep devotion to this community that has given her so much support and just has been an incredible part of her life that she wants to keep and hold dear, while at the same time helping it move into the future. So she's doing a lot of advocacy work using her voice, even though it's scary, even though it's against the grain, to help make change. And she's really inspiring. So I look forward to you getting to know Andrea Forsythe a little bit better in today's interview. Enjoy. And welcome to the show, Andrea. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and I'm so excited to get to know you a little better. We've just kind of seen each other on Facebook. We have a ton of friends in common. I know you're an artist, you do theater, but what has really captured my attention is your faith and your spirituality. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and dive into that?
Sure. So I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons. I was born in the church and I grew up in a very Orthodox family, and my dad held lots of prominent positions in the church. And I grew up and got married in the temple, which is a place where Mormons get married. And I did all the Mormon things. And let's see. And then I had children and I started staying home with them. And I soon realized that I was probably never meant to stay home, even though I love my children. I don't think I was, I'm really cut out for staying at home, but I gave it a good shot for many years. And in our church, it's women are encouraged to stay home with the kids, and the family is a very important thing. Now, there's lots of LDS women that work as well, but in my family that I grew up in, in particular, we all my sisters were stay-at-home moms, and my mom was. So I just kind of fell in line. And after a while, the square peg in a round hole started wearing me down, and I had a mental breakdown. I call it a mental break open.
Yeah.
Because everything's scattered. My faith fell apart, my self-esteem, my identity, everything fell apart. So I slowly, there was times when I tried to glue it back together and be that perfect Mormon woman again. And slowly I realized that I couldn't, I was never going to go back to that anymore, because I just couldn't. As much as I tried, I just couldn't. So I started meditating, and I went to therapy, which is really scary. And I became open about that. I went to therapy, and I realized that I had several mental illnesses that I had been hiding for my life, because Mormon women don't have mental illness, right?
Sure.
And of course, I'm being facetious. And so I just became open with that, because I just didn't know what else to do with it. It was a really low point in my life. And I promised myself at that time that once I got feeling better, that I would be the person to help other people in their darkest places. So that has kind of been my quest. And of course, with mental illness, you heal, and then you have to go back and you heal and you go, it's never a linear kind of heal. And so I'll probably be healing for the rest of my life. But I started taking medication, which some people don't like medication, which is fine too. It helped me just get above things so that I could start healing. And I started making changes in my life. I got a job, and I just started becoming the person I knew I was supposed to be, without any restrictions upon me. And in so doing, now I am on social media advocating for those who are in the margins of our church, mostly BIPOC, LGBTQ, and women. And I am still an active member, and I love being a part of my congregation, and they are my people. And I have found that though I disagree with a lot of things that's going on in the church, I am in the business of humans. And I'm not a very good businesswoman in this business, because I of course am just a human, but if I'm in the business of humans, I have humans that I get to love in my community already. I don't need to go anywhere else to learn how to love humans. And I have found a great community there that get to love me in all my craziness, and I get to love them. And I get to stir them up a bit too, and they get to challenge me. And I get to do it without judging them, and hopefully they can do it without judging me. And we can see if we can make this relationship flourish, which I know we already have. And so now I also am an advocate for mental health online as well. And and what else? Do you have any questions?
What else? That's a lot. I'm so amazed by your story, because I can understand how frightening it is to step outside of a box that was comfortable, a box that was very familiar your entire life, and to say, whoa, in order to be true to myself, I have to open the door, walk outside, and in a way you're exposing yourself to criticism, it must have been a very fearful thing to take that first step. What was that like for you, and what were your initial reactions from your fellow members?
So I remember the post. It was just a post that was basically just outing myself, that I wanted to belong to this church, and I also disagreed with many things that were going on. And in the church, it like we don't really talk about things that are going wrong in the church, which is totally understandable now. I understand that institutions in general nobody really likes to talk about their dirt.
Sure.
And I kind of had some empathy for that, because when I was in my darkest time, um, I learned that I had to own my darkness.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I owned my darkness, I could actually amplify my light. And I have hope that that's where the church can be. I have hope that the church can recognize that they're not alone in their darkness and their light. All of their people in their congregation are dealing with it. Every other institution is dealing with it. Every other institution that claims that God speaks to them does it, right? God
Right.
speaks to me, and I am a real jerk, and I'm a really awesome person. Both.
And that's the duality. Like you said, if people and institutions can accept that, that's how we move into the future. Things that stay in the darkness are what fester and create all of the problems. And I truly feel, and agreeing with you, based on what you're saying, that in order to evolve, it's like if these institutions are going to survive, there has to be some self-reflection and acceptance there. And I truly wonder if that does start from the people, if the institution starts to see people like you use your voice and say, hey, have we thought about this? I'm doing this work on myself. I wonder if it'll work its way up and make that change on an institutional level. What are your hopes for that? Or do you think that's possible?
I mean, that's why I'm here, is that I have hope for that. Um, I I look at my children, and they have transgender kids at school. They have gay friends that they don't even blink an eye at. It's not even a thing,
Right.
right? And the same with their friends of color. And my daughter is talking about anti-racism, just things that I never did.
Right.
Um, and my generation, it was just more hush hush, all of that,
Mm.
unfortunately. And I grew up in a predominantly white Mormon area, so we kind of could ignore. We had the privilege of ignoring
Right.
the injustices of race, right? Um, and so I just feel like it's going to naturally happen. And like once my children are the leaders of the church, it's like they won't even understand. They'll look back and say, "What were you doing, church?" Right? I
Mm-hmm.
hope that I hope we can transition. And I in the meantime, I'm so heartbroken at the people that we abuse,
Yes.
because religious abuse is for real. And many people have suffered from it, especially those in the margins, the LGBTQ and the members of color and women. There's just so much trauma that happens. And I hope that, I mean, there's going to be collateral damage in the meantime before we get our act together. But my hope is that by the time my kids grow up, that they will, that things, I mean, things will just have worked out. And it's unfortunate that it's going to take that long. It's awful that it's going to take that long, but eventually something will happen. And I guess I'm just trying to expedite it, or I really am just trying to be that voice for those margins in my congregation currently, that says, I understand, and let's try to figure this out together. And so I guess that's the only thing I can do right now.
Yeah. And I agree with you about this generation of kids coming up right now. They see things so clearly and don't have a lot of the hangups that our generation and before us have had. And it's like, just being able to see their reaction to the way that the, major institutions that have control right now are doing things, it's just so clear to them. It's like, no, that's not cool. Like, I don't understand why we're putting up with this. Whereas I feel like our generation is more, we just kind of stay silent, try not to make a big deal out of things, keep the peace. And, when that happens, things are allowed to just get worse. So I have a lot of hope for this generation. So you have two kids?
I have 3 kids. Yeah.
3 kids.
Mhm.
And how old were you? Or you don't say how old, but how long ago was it when you made this leap? Your
So
first post?
yeah, so my post actually was just a year and a half ago.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I haven't been vocal for very long. I have been I had my mental break open about 4 years ago. So
Mm.
I've been ruminating, and I've been kind of tiptoeing around it. And I've started lots of women's groups that kind of tiptoe around the issue. And then I realized there's no more tiptoeing. Like if I want to heal people, I actually have to get to the root of the problem. And the root of their problems it's going to piss a lot of people off, like any of us who get to know the root of our problems, right? I get really pissed off when I realize the root of my problem, because it takes a lot of work to get to the root. But
yes, it does.
I have hope. And yes, I lost some friends. I didn't answer that question. I did lose a lot of friends. And I've lost a lot of social currency in my word. And that's the word is the group of people that get together in different locations in the church. And I've gained a lot of friends. I've had some really hard conversations with people, and lots of people asking me to stop. And I kindly say, thank you for your concern. This is where I feel like there's just so many people being hurt that I can no longer, and people being hurt that I see, and I can no longer just be complicit in it. So,
wow, that's such a brave thing to do, and a scary thing too. How did your family take it? Were they very surprised by this turn, or was it supportive from the get-go?
Well, so my sister is gay, and she came out like 10 years ago. And I suppose that's where kind of my advocacy came from. Even back then, just as soon as she came out, even before, because I have a lot of gay friends, because I'm a musical theater performer. Even before then, I just knew that that doesn't sound like the business of humans, the way that we treat our LGBT people. And so when she came out, that's when I kind of stood firm in the fact that, because currently our gay couples cannot get married in the temple. And gay couples, if they came to our church currently, most of them would have some sort of church discipline, meaning they couldn't speak or give talks at church.
Oh,
So it's a very not safe place for our LGBTQ folks, and which makes me crazy. But so I have always felt that LGBT people should be able to get married at the temple, and that's a really me even saying that is very very controversial in the church, and many people don't say it because I could get called into the bishop's office, and maybe I could get disciplined by the church.
Sure.
But that no longer, that's not what compels me to do things anymore. I mean, if they feel like they have to punish me, then that's their prerogative. I will continue to stay in the church and love my people and advocate for them. So my family has kind of had to work through some things for a while. Some of my family has left the church, and some of them are still in. And our family has done a really beautiful job of really respecting each other and meeting each other where we are. And it's been a really beautiful thing. My really Orthodox parents threw a wedding shower for my sister and her wife.
Oh.
And it's just been beautiful. I mean, just because, again, I think all humans understand that we're in the business for humans, right? And nothing can get between us and family. Yeah. So, and then my husband is very supportive, and he's always kind of just felt the same way I have.
That's so important to have that support, because when you're speaking, truth towards an entire institution that is like family, if your own family isn't able to hold space for you too, that's a really scary thing. So that's really wonderful that you have that. I want to talk about, well, first of all, before I go to my next question, you say I'm in the business of humans. Can you get a little bit more specific about what that means?
Yeah, I have felt that sometimes as religion, the question has come up: are we in the business of humans, or are we in the business of maintaining laws, maintaining orthodoxy, or maintaining dogma? I feel that the radical message of Jesus was to say the law can be important in lots of instances, but sometimes the law actually gets in the way of us being in the business of humans.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like his message was that that he came to say that there's a higher law, and the higher law is humans.
Yeah.
And so it's my very Christianity that drives me to do what I do, that Christ was always in the margins, working with people. And when higher up religious people would question him, he would always stand by the humans in the margins. It seemed to be, he was always trying to point the mirror at the religious folks around him, and seeing if they were in the business of humans or the business of law. And so that's kind of where that has come from, is that I feel like a lot of our, how we treat our LGBTQ folks, that we're not going to allow them to get married in the temple. Is that that's a part of our law, but it doesn't sound like we really care about the humans behind that.
Sure.
So yes. And like I said, I'm probably I have some real jerkiness to me personally. So I wish that I could say better that I was always in the business of humans. It is my goal, but I just fall short of it all the time. And I suppose maybe that's why I can have empathy for
Mm-hmm.
institution that I belong to, because many of the way that I am hurts people. And in fact, many of my personality traits are abusive. Mm-hmm. So I can actually look at the institution that I belong to and say, oh yeah, I actually kind of get that. And yet I have to hold myself accountable and hold the institution accountable, and also have empathy and grace for just the humanness of it all.
Wow, that is a really powerful, powerful statement, to be able to accept. We try to accept each other, one another, family members, friends, for what we may perceive as fault, or like, well, I guess I'm canceling you because of this and this. And you're taking that on a grand level to the church. And I find that, like you said, grace is the perfect word. You see in yourself the imperfection, and through that acceptance, you can accept others and other institutions. That's such an evolved way of thinking, and I think we could all benefit from a little bit of more of that in our lives. Tell me what you love about the church. What is it that keeps your heart filled and keeps you coming back?
Well, it's the business of humans. So these are the people that bring me casseroles when I'm sick.
Right.
And those are the people that I bring casseroles to. And they're the people who babysit for me when I'm in a pinch. And they're the people who love my children, that will see them at the store and give them a hug. Like that to me that's human, right? These are my humans. And we're all so imperfect, but it's the humans interacting with humans on a very imperfect level, to me, is spirituality.
Yes.
That's where my spirituality comes from, is the act of trying to see someone through God's eyes. And I have found that, people are always like, well, why don't you come join my church? And and while I love echo chambers, I love it totally affirms who I am and that I'm on the right track, and it makes me feel like such a great human. I've lived in an echo chamber for 37 years. And I've been there, done that. And now it's time for me. And I don't think this is for everybody, because like I said, I think spiritual abuse is a huge thing. And I realize that if you have LDS listeners listening to me, I can trigger a lot of stuff that I'm still in the church, because of the abuse they felt. And I actually feel so much for that. And there's so much empathy in that for me too. But that I'm no longer I don't want to be in an echo chamber anymore. I want to be able to we have a beautiful program called the Ministering Program, where we have certain individuals that we just kind of keep track of. And I get put with 90-year-old women, and I get put with young mothers, right? People that I never would have learned to love any other way. And some of them are my dearest friends. And this Christmas, we went to sing for my 90-year-old friend, and she checks up on me. And it's just, for me, that is spirituality. That spirituality cannot be developed in a vacuum. It's through it, unfortunately, and I don't like it. It's through interacting with people that really bug us, and that and also people that we love, because I think the people that we love make it so it's worth it, the other stuff. But I really do think true spirituality comes from the real gritty, like raw stuff that where we have to encounter our darkest stuff.
Agree totally with you. And that's such it's a really touching way of putting things. We just need to see each other as the people, the imperfect people that we are. And that doesn't mean we get to withdraw our love if it doesn't quite fit into our parameters of this is the way it should be. This is the box you should live in order for me to love you.
Now, just to interrupt, I'm still learning this line though, because a lot of times, especially as women in my church, and this is how I was before, I thought that I had to give everything to everybody, right?
Oh, no.
Yes, right, and that at the expense of my own mental health and my own health. So it's a fine line I have found in giving grace and also giving grace to yourself. So for instance, if you are traumatized by going to church, you should probably not go to church.
Sure.
Right? And if you're traumatized by being amongst people, it's about setting those boundaries. And then once you set those boundaries, if you can live comfortably wherever you are. And I have done healing so that I too have felt a religious abuse, but I have done healing to where I'm in a place where I no longer put myself at risk. And I have strict boundaries for my own mental health, but that I can be there to love people.
That's an extremely fine line, because we can certainly go overboard with I'm here to love everyone, I'm here to take care of everyone, when your own cup is so depleted, you've got nothing left, and you just allow people to take whatever from you because you say, well, I guess I'm a good person, so it should be. It's like, no, you have to love yourself the way you love everyone else. You don't get to exclude yourself from that conversation, right? And which I am guilty of for sure. But then when it comes down to it, if you look at it, if I have nothing left, how good could I really be for everyone else anyway? So, there's a couple different ways to look at that. I wanted to touch on the empathy part. Now, I know you, like me, are a performer, and there's something to be said about when you're playing a role, you have to dig in and find the way to justify your character and their actions and what they do. Do you find, and also, artists are we have empaths throughout this field. That's how you get to the depth of the work. Can you talk to me a little bit about the connection there?
That's a fascinating question, because I have been from the time I was little. I remember thinking, how do I know how to feel this? Because I grew up very privileged, like life. Like I did not face very much pain at all when I was a child, but yet I really understood people's pain on a really weird level. I thought, even as a child, I didn't know how, but I guess perhaps it was a God-given gift that lots of us performers have, to where even as a child, I remember kind of always looking around, noticing those people who were in a lot of pain. And I think that is when you have to be so detailed, because as a performer, you have to be so detailed as, to all of the little nuances that this person has and the reactions that this person has. You have to get into the details of their life. And when you do that, things start illuminating that you had never thought of before. That once you start walking in someone else's shoes, it's like, oh my gosh, like I had never even thought of this before. And I suppose that's what's wrong in the world sometimes, is that I think we have a hard time. I think as humans in general, our paths are so hard. It seems sometimes that it's almost like it's too much to go into someone else's shoes. And I guess performers just force themselves to go there, right?
Or can't help but go there. And it's like, oh gosh, I'm carrying so much. There's definitely energetic tools to work with that and, not make it so heavy, have it still be a gift, but not completely overwhelming, right? I think there's a fine line there too.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
So tell me what you're working on right now. What is at the forefront of your mind and your heart and your power that you're putting out into the world?
So recently I have found out that I'm sure there's several, but I know of one LGBTQ child in my own congregation at church. And I came to a very dark revelation that I haven't been doing the work inside my own area. So I started working on just some resources to give to my area leaders. And then it started turning into something else. And so now I, with a lot of LDS social influencers, are figuring out how to get resources and how to get support to that youth inside the church that can't leave the church because of his parents or her parents, and have bishops that still have really, really old views of what LGBTQ the issues are there. And so we're trying to figure out how to pinpoint how to get help for that child, and how to get it through the doors of the bishop, how to get it through the doors of the leadership. And it's a challenge. It's a real challenge. And so it's called the LDS LGBTQ Love Project. And we're trying to figure out how to do this on a grassroots level. So that's kind of what I'm working on right now.
That's fantastic. And I love that through the care of this one individual, that will have ripple effects. Not only will you change that person's life, this will change the way things work as a whole. What's your big audacious goal? If your voice could be amplified, as big as you would like it, if your change could be, of a certain magnitude, it could be, big, or it could just be on the individual levels. What do you feel like in your heart of hearts you would like to see happen?
So I've kind of pinpointed where I'm in this committee with this initiative that's going on, and I am a mobilizer of people on a grand scale. I think. I mean, I just, for some reason, I have this confidence, whether it's real or not, that I can mobilize people. I can help change on a grand scale, and so I hope to continue to do this with anti-racism work and gender equality work in the church. And then I hope to do it with religion in general. And then I hope to do it because I feel like if I can figure out how to have these conversations with someone who doesn't believe any of it's going on, right? Like many people, many leaders in our church right now don't believe that our LGBT people are suffering, and they don't know that our BIPOC people are leaving our church and are in a lot of pain, and women as well. So I'm learning. I think if I can figure this out, I think I have the key to a huge thing, is trying to soften my heart to have empathy for the other side of the story, and to talk to that person like a child of God, and to talk about really hard things and find out how we can communicate with each other. And try to, and a lot of it is you have to really humble yourself, right? Yeah. There's a lot of things that I want to say in this initiative, but I understand that the church is not ready for me to hear it. So I have to figure out ways of saying what I want to say without saying it. Saying will soften someone's heart and lead them to something different. So now we need lots of people in this. Like, some people need to say the truth, right? Some people are born to just say exactly what's the truth, and in a harsh, whatever way they want to say it, because those people are important too. and then and so we're all needed in our little paths. And I feel like one thing that I think I will learn at the end of this, and I hope that I will learn, is how to speak to someone who has opposite beliefs of me, and how to have proactive conversations where we can start understanding each other.
That is the key to, I think, our humanity's survival, truly. And it's such a hard thing to do. And there's so much delicacy involved with it, because these are deep rooted beliefs and feelings. And it's not just something that you can change someone's mind in 5 minutes. It takes time. And the growth will happen when the growth is ready to happen in that human. And it's easy to be impatient and just be like, well, I don't they get it already? It's so clear. But there's got to be still love for everyone's journey. And that's hard to say, because truly it is hard to believe certain beliefs are still around. But you can't actually force someone to change their heart.
No. And then I also have empathy because, and on many issues, I was there one time.
Yeah.
So if somebody would have forced me to believe something that I was not ready to believe, it just doesn't work, right? And so I forgive myself for not always knowing what I know now. And I have to forgive those on their own paths, and understand too, like, the people in charge of my church have done extraordinary things in so many different areas, right? And that generation of people, I mean, think of all the advancements that our parents have brought into this world, right? And they made it so it's a safe place for us. They made our nation, well, they made it for safe for some of us. And I think our generation and the next generation, I think what will happen is that we will look back and say, how can we make this a safe place for all of us? And I think that's our next step. But we have to honor our elders. We do, because they've made it so that at least some of us have safety, to where those of us who have safety and privilege, it's now I am freed up to actually do the work, right? I'm not hungry. I'm not in need of love in traumatized way. I grew up in a loving home. I have a loving husband. I have loving children. I'm hungry. We have a home over our heads. So when all of those things are taken care of on our hierarchy of needs, right? That's when we can start looking around. And so I encourage all of us who have all of our hierarchy of needs fulfilled, or at least some of them, that I encourage us that it's our job, it's our role now to look around us and to see who still is not having those needs being filled, and how can we help fill them.
That's really important and very inspiring. And I think a lot of people are heeding that call right now. And I think many more are ready to join on that. Can you tell me how
for you, do you think, how do we bridge this gap? Because in order for us to help the generation that has gone before, I still feel like there has to be a great deal of respect that we give them,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And honor.
Respecting elders has always been, to me, one of the most important things about family. Like, to me, my grandmother lived with me most of my life. Elders have a wisdom that has been, I think, lost down the generations. Yet at the same time, we have a wisdom that was not available to them because of the structures that were in place. To me, it's about listening. It's about sitting down and just like, tell me your story. I want to hear about what was it like during World War II. What did you think when Germany was in that position that it was in, and what did you think about America, stepping in? How does it come? What comes from your point of view of those situations, which I think is incredibly informative, not only to them as individuals, but the thinking of the time, because we can't really move forward until we understand the past. And the elderly population is so valuable, and their knowledge is so rich. And I don't think we sit down and talk to them enough.
Don't. No. And in fact, I feel like it's this work. My first response is to just say, they've done it all wrong, right? Like that's kind of my first response.
Yeah.
But I don't think we can come at it like that because it's not the truth. They, like I said, they were in fight, flight, freeze response for so many years.
Yeah.
Our grandparents and our parents, and you know, our grandparents were especially, but then they were the ones raising our parents, right? So it was really like most of that generation is about survival, and they worked really, really hard to figure out a way to help them and their family survive. And I think they've done a great job, like I said, for some of us. And now we have to look back at those people who didn't have the head start in the game.
Yeah. And what I really take from them, especially, is the sense of community. So, you know, today in America, there's such a sense of individuality to the point of like, I don't even know if I care about anyone else. I'm not saying that's the norm. I'm saying it's a trend. And back in the day, if you will, it was more about how can we as a community do this together? We're looking out for each other. We're all in this together, instead of as long as I get mine, I'm good. And so I think if we can remind ourselves what that feels like, and I think we would just, get so much healing done as a community, as a country, to be able to remember how we're all connected, that we do belong to each other, and we should take care of each other.
Beautiful. Actually, I had never thought of that, but I think that that's really true. That's what our grandparents, they knew that a long time ago, right? Our grandparents and our parents, they knew that. And then I think that we've lost that.
Yeah. But I have hope it'll come back. I do.
And I do think that I see hope in that next generation. It seems like most of them want to go into fields where they are taking care of other people and in community. So.
Yes, I think about even, I'm like the youngest of the millennials, but even, starting with the millennials, there's this whole idea of the company I work for, the people that I associate myself with, if they have like a stance on social justice or environment or ways that they are giving back as an institution, I know I want to align myself with that. And so you're seeing that more and more. That's part of like, okay, what's the pay? What's the job? Also, like as a company, do I align with you? And I think that those voices are being heard, and I think companies are taking notice of that.
Yeah, 100%. I think too. Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's reform right there, right? That the younger generation is requiring the more established people and organizations to to stand up for morals that they believe in order for them to choose their workplace. So I think that's a really good thought.
Change is in the air. So tell me, how can people learn more about your work? What's the best way to get a hold of what you do?
So right now I am on Instagram at Andrea Forsythe, and then on Facebook at Andrea Forsythe. Right now I'm just mostly on social media, and I'm hoping to do branch out more, but this is where I'm at right now.
Well, you're definitely making an impression, and your voice is being heard. So keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you for listening to Lighthouse Conversations. If this show resonates with you, it would mean so much to have you rate, review, and share. Don't forget to follow us at chellycanales.com and on social media.